happening, YouTube? Your homie S. Dot coming back to you with another video. And today's video is going to be a deck profile for Fortress Maximus, the Great War veteran. I've definitely been very excited to build this deck ever since he was first revealed. He has a very strong stat line in terms of his attack and defense. Now, he does only have 15 health, but I'll talk about him overall with his two heads here in a second. But I think this deck definitely has some potential viability in the early format while people still try to figure things out. I've been through like 5 iterations of this deck, and on this 5th iteration I feel very strongly about this. Like my first build started out very heavy blue and like only not a couple of oranges, but like maybe like 10 or so of my cards are oranges. But then, and I also built this deck before we got the rest of the set revealed, and this was even after Belligerence. So despite that, the deck has definitely just changed, obviously ever since we got the rest of the cards. And going to this 5th iteration, I'm just trying to find the most simplest deck list I could play the best cards to cater to his effect. And to talk about him real quick, let's talk about his alt mode. Now, he's 8 attack, 15 health, and 2 defense. Now, the 15 health is not a lot. You also have Cerebros as well. Cerebros has 8 health himself, and then whatever head you play, the maximum health you can get out of any head is 4, because Grax and I want to say Chasm both have 4 health. So you can look at, of course the emissary that comes with the deck itself. He comes with 4 health as well. So at a maximum total you can potentially get is 27. So 27 isn't a ton, but the fact that what his effect does dwindles down your opponent's health so fast. These games are actually fast with this deck. I really don't see you going into time, whether you're playing against a blue deck or an orange deck. You don't have a lot to think about for your turns in terms of who you flip and things like that. You will 100% obviously be flipping Maximus every, when he's attacking in his body mode, and call it a day. So talking about his alt mode, again, he has 8 attack, 15 health, 2 defense, and when he defends and you flip at least a white and a blue, you'll deal 1 damage back to the attacker. So it's not going to happen so often. I'm not playing like 10 or so whites like I did in like version 2 or so to try and hit the effect. I'm playing like I think 6 or 7, and if I hit the effect, I hit the effect. I don't want to necessarily build to this effect. And even if you played like 10 whites, like in that build, I still didn't hit the effect on every defense. Like, it's just like a dream world if you think that you're going to hit the effect, or it was dream world for me to think that I was going to hit the effect on every single defense. So every other couple attacks, when it happens, it's great. But this also begins the game, of course, with the Cerebros. So keep in mind the Cerebros head, by the way, starts on Fortress Maximus. So Fortress Maximus will start out with Bold and Tough One. So this is definitely going to be a mixed deck. And then instead of playing Emissary, I did want to try Emissary with the deck, but I felt that the double blues in this deck were, as the title suggests, 9 double blues. I felt that you still wanted to try to block as much as your opponent's attack as possible, and let the Pierce, just get in for Pierce, but hopefully it's not as much. So if they have like, 8 Pierce 3, you're not taking, if I only block for like 2, because I've seen builds like that, like play more orange than anything else, and like kind of always hit hard, but you can't defend well. So I just think that playing Flame Out, the 2-star head, has more merit. He has Bold 2, so keep in mind also the second head that comes with the character does not give Maximus a bonus, which would be insane if it did. I guess that might have been a little too powerful. But when the Maximus dies, the Cerebros head will pop off, and then we'll talk about his effect here in a second as well. And then the head from the Cerebros, or excuse me, the head for Cerebros, the one that you have as your 3rd character will pop off, be on Cerebros afterwards. So anyway, of course, the effect that probably drew most of us to this card is his body mode effect. Whenever he attacks and you flip at least an orange and a black, you do 2 damage to each enemy, and then you flip this to its alt mode after the battle. So if you were wondering how to get to its alt mode, if you haven't seen yet, once you do hit the effect, you are able to obviously just flip him to bot mode, or to the body mode, alt mode, and get the effect, every time you hit a blue and a white, so which is pretty cool. The way I have the deck set up right now, I think it's 42 cards. One reason why it's 42 cards is because like it's really hard. Like it was harder before, but like it's really hard now to want to cut any of the cards I have in there based off of the colors I need and things like that for each of these effects, because you need white, blue, orange, and green, or white, blue, orange, and black a lot for both Cerebros and the Fortress Maximus. So and another reason why it's at 42 is because I found out I deck out very quickly. And Cerebros, unfortunately, when you deck out, you're not able to get a upgrade from your scrap pile. What am I talking about? Well, he also has bold 1, tough 1 himself. Keep in mind, while he was ahead, he gave bold 1 and tough 1. But he also has another effect, and when he attacks, or excuse me, when he battles, so that means on attack or defense, when he battles and you flip a white, orange, black, and blue, you may play one of your upgrades from your scrap pile onto this card. So there are a couple cards in it. Well, there's one card. There's a set of 4 cards total that you were able to play off of his effect. That'll be very valuable. Other ones won't work, and again, I'll explain that when I get to the effect. But this effect is actually very, very cool. You'll be able to, like, pull Armed Hovercraft and things like that from your scrap pile. That's one of the cards, and it can definitely be very powerful. So Cerebros actually in the lore is the, as far as I know, he is the actual main part of the entire team. Like, Maximus is there to kind of take the big hits, dish out big hits, but eventually the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? So Cerebros is actually like the main brain. I mean, hence obviously he's the head of the deck, but yeah, he's like the centerpiece. So this is where, like, you should get a lot of your grind game going, and dwindle down your opponent's cards until the game is over, of course. And then last but not least, if you end up losing the Cerebros, you will bring out Flame Out. Flame Out is your last ditch effort. You can use cards in conjunction, like with Belligerence and things like that. He does have bold 2 attack, 2 health, and 1 defense. He probably won't be surviving any hits unless he's dealing against playing against another head that's not Ominous, because Ominous easily just attacks and kills it with his Pierce 2. It's 2 Pierce 4, but obviously you don't need to flip any oranges. But against like Kreb or Briscoe, depending on how many blues you flip, maybe in that end game when it's head versus head, a head-to-head battle. Ha! Anyway, you might be able to defend potentially, but it's very unlikely. But he does have bold 2, so this is like your all-out, go in with Flame Out and hopefully get there with that last-ditch effort. So without further ado, let's jump right into the deck list. All right, everybody. So for this deck, we're gonna start off with our disruption cards, and there's really not a whole bunch of disruption in here. Well, I guess the secret actions are disruption technically, but you guys already know how I do. You guessed it, 3 security checkpoint. Now, this card, in this deck, there's no draw power, and because you're playing 1 tall, you're not going to have a lot of time to play like so many actions and upgrades and articulate things in that nature, especially like the Optimus Thrust deck back from last format. The opponent wasn't able to set up like they really wanted to when it was 3-on-3. Like, you have one guy tapped, and then you can play an upgrade, and you can play an action. You don't have time to do all that, so you really don't have time to draw cards or waste any actions on playing any cards. You're kind of balls to the wall in the first place playing this deck, playing a 1 tall deck, and depending on what kind of matchup you run into, you might, like very heavy orange-black decks. After turn 2, when both players can play an action and upgrade, it can definitely be very bad for Maximus potentially. But of course, one of his main weaknesses, by the way, is Belligerence. Belligerence turning all your oranges into blue. All your blues into oranges rather, meaning that his effect, even if you do have him in his alt mode, flipping the blue and white, even though you flip the color blue, the blue turns into an orange, so you won't be able to get the effect. So it'll just be orange and whites and whatever else for the turn, and that'll turn off his effect. But anyway, yeah, 3 security checkpoint, you will be able to potentially disrupt your opponent in the early game. Once you get one of the weapons in this deck on him, you might be able to sacrifice the other weapon or whatever you have in your hand and just just lose the other card, as long as, it's for the greater good, getting rid of all of your opponent's weapons. That'll make their attacks when they all attack into the Maximus a lot weaker. So 3 security checkpoint, and actually, I will be posting a Fortress Maximus link, so I won't lay it out since you guys can see it that way. Next up, we have 3 Fight for Position and 2 Master Metallicato. Now, when I first saw Master Metallicato, this was definitely a 3 of when I first started building the deck. But as time went along, and I had a 40-card build, and then I ended up adding 2 more cards. This card ended up not making the cut at 3. Yes, it easily triggers the effect on attack, and it does help on defense in terms of the icon. But this is one of the new hybrid icons that are out of the set. And what a hybrid icon is pretty much, so it has multiple icons, and each icon has potentially a different trait on it. So as you can see, for the specialist, or for the orange, we have the specialist tag. For the black, we have the range tag, and for the blue, we have melee. It would have been too good to give the range characters the orange or the blue. The specialist, of course, they gave the best part of this, probably the orange. Yeah, not probably, it is. They gave the orange to specialists because specialists are the least played in the game, so there's not a lot of specialist decks you want to play. I'm gonna have to look into actually trying to build a specialist deck that has like a lot of bold with this, because Maximus comes even stronger because the orange will count for its actual attack at that point, and the black, of course, the black counts only for range for pierce, and then the blue counts for melee for defense. Now, keep in mind Metroplex effects again, like Fortress Maximus. You flipping this card will still trigger your effects, so all you need is the colors. You won't necessarily actually get the icons to, you know, help you out in battle, potentially depending on your trait, but definitely something to keep in mind. And of course, 3-5 position. This is 5 position was an easy card to definitely add into the deck, being that this is a deck that needs to flip an orange and a black. This gives you bold 2 as well, so there's a lot of synergies with that, so that was an easy call to add that card. Next up, we have another orange-black card that works very well in this deck. It's a card I was kind of very high on, along with they showed magnetic dysfunction ray before they showed precision fire, and I saw mag ray and I was like, okay, that's cool, because you know what, like, by the way, if you guys haven't heard yet, I'm kind of going off on a little side note, but things like Fangry with the Parsec head, if you can mix and match your heads and bodies, but if you do that, they will become both Autobot and Decepticon. So, for example, Fangry with Parsec head can get hit by Sky Shadow now. Fangry with Parsec can also get hit by the magnetic dysfunction ray, so you'll take 2. So you'll take the one and take another one because he is also an Autobot. This card, Precision Fire, they showed afterwards, and this is a lot easier to activate and not have your Maximus be affected. There may be some times where you call alt mode or bot mode, but the thing is, we have a new mode and a new keyword, I guess. Not necessarily keyword, but a new mode in general, and it's called body mode. So we have combiner mode, bot mode, alt mode, and body mode now. So you can flip to body mode and then call alt or bot mode, and your Maximus won't be affected. So you can get 1 damage on each character with that effect, and then you can also attack, and if you trigger the Maximus effect, that's potential for 3 damage on all of your opponent's characters. That's a lightning bolt, a bolt of lightning, excuse me, one shot stand, one shot fall, just on all their characters, pretty much. Like, it's actually insane. Next up, we have my favorite cards in the deck. We have 3 in hostilities and 3 belligerents. He's on the card, so gotta play it, right? I do try to look for synergies like that sometimes, like overwhelming advantage. You could potentially play overwhelming advantage in a tank deck with Megatron. You know, it's not always clear cut that you should do that, but in this case, this is definitely a 100% case where you should definitely have 3 of these, of each of these in your deck. Now keep in mind the synergies with this. For belligerents, you're a mixed deck, so you turn all your blues into oranges. So if you flip the blue-black, well, now that blue-black is an orange-black, which will also trigger your effect now. If you're on defense, you're in hostilities, you need to flip a blue-white. Well, if you flip an orange and a white, now that orange is a blue now. So now that blue will also help trigger your Maximus effect on defense. So 100%, I think these are 6 cards that are staples in the deck for that reason alone, to help with that. But then on top of that, belligerent, you're playing 9 double blues, so 9 double blues can really get you to some insanely high attacks, and also help you trigger your effects for Maximus to deal photon bomb your opponent's field, and then, you know, potentially definitely really threaten your opponent's characters and like KO them with not a lot of effort. And then same with in hostilities, you know, you can use this to blunt an opponent's you know, their best attacker. Keep in mind, if they do play belligerents on you, again, one of the weak points of this deck is having a belligerents put on you and you not being able to do anything about it, is belligerents last to the end of turn, in hostilities last for 1 battle. So when you're the person with in hostility set, you have to, if you're staring down multiple characters, which you'll probably see that more with I keep wanting to say Metroplex, you see that more with Maximus, then you'll probably see that with more than any other deck. Usually when both players are playing 3 to 4 characters, you may have a situation where the guy that has 4 characters versus your 3, he'll get 2 attacks on your bots, and he might play belligerents on that turn. But then even then, it's like, okay, well, you might have to take 1 big attack, but then you just in hostilities, an attack that hurts the most. So same way with this situation with Maximus. You know, they have, like, if they make you go first, because I think this is a deck that definitely wants to go second, just like Metroplex. If they make you go first, you definitely want to, I think Triptychon probably wants to go second too, so you can find a battlefield encouragement. Anyway, you want to if you have in hostilities on your first turn, if they make you go first, or not your first turn, I'm sorry. If well, I guess on your first turn you're just screwed, because if you go first and they go second, they have belligerents, you're just screwed. But in the event that you do have in hostilities, what I'm getting at is you want to make sure you just block their strongest attack, because what happens if you guys don't know yet, in hostilities overrides belligerents for 1 battle, and why that is because you play the belligerent, your opponent plays the belligerents first, and then once you flip in hostilities, that'll override the belligerents for 1 battle. But then again, the advantage Belligerence has over in hostilities is it turns on the rest of the attacks and turns any blues you turn into oranges. So again, definitely 3 staples in this deck. Very, very powerful cards. Probably some of the top 5 cards in the set easily. Next up, we have another secret action, 3 Hold the Line. 3 Hold the Line plays a lot of roles during the mid to late game when your opponent has heads and things like that. That will deal a grand bit of damage. Or if you're playing against Airstrike Patrol or whatever, if there's still a deck, or any deck that has 5 or so stars, 5 or 6 star characters or whatever, you won't be able to take more damage than that character's star count with this card, and you'll also be able to heal one as well. Another role that this deck plays, or this card plays, is that it's a green, because you do still need some greens in the deck. I'm not playing 6, I think I'm only playing 5, but you don't have a whole bunch of time to really trade. I won't say time, but there's only a select few greens that you just get, and you just keep it moving, so you don't need a whole bunch in this deck. But it is a green, so it plays that role, and then there's also a white, because you need the white icon for the alt side of Maximus, and then also the for Cerebros. So this plays multiple roles, and you're not going to always be able to be balls to wall offensive with this deck. You need to play defensive sometimes, and even if it's not just Maximus, because you're probably not winning. It means if you win the game with Maximus, your opponent's deck is not built to adapt to wave 5. So which is good for you, the Maximus player. But overall, this will even potentially just be good on the Cerebros in the later game. So definitely 3 of this card. Like I said, it plays multiple roles. And last but not least, from my actions, I'm also playing 2 Heroic Resolve. Now, the reason why I'm able to play 2 Heroic Resolve, I guess I should have technically showed this at the beginning, but I figured I'd wait till now. I'm also playing 1 Heroic Spotlight. So if you remember, the Flameout is 3 stars. So Flameout being 3 stars, you still have a star to play with, because the deck comes with Emissary, and Emissary being 4 stars. So this actually ends up making 24 stars, and then the Heroic Spotlight makes 25 stars, which allows you to play up to 2 extra star blue cards in your deck. So this will allow me to play 2 Heroic Resolve in the deck, and so you're able to play 8 double blues in the deck. And this effect is definitely very valuable, especially in a potential, like if you're in a situation where your Maximus will die to your opponent's last attacker. This becomes even more, this comes like really strong, because your Maximus, when he should have died, obviously he won't. This will go into your KO area, and then you'll be able to get another swing off with the Maximus, and that'll really throw off the equilibrium of the game and plans that your opponent had to get rid of the Maximus. So consideration for this deck was Energized Field. Energized Field is definitely something to think about, because it is a double blue star card, and it's an armor that gives you +1 defense, and every time you flip an orange on your defense, you are able to deal 1 damage back to the enemy. So if you can deal 2 damage to everybody on your opponent's turn, and then there's 100% no way that you're going to miss at least one of the effects. So either, like, the best, obviously the best situation is to be able to get both effects. So you can get Maximus effect by flipping a blue and a white, and if you also flip an orange, you'll deal 2 damage back, 1 for Maximus and 1 for the Energized Field. So that's something to think about. The turns that you do have in hostility set, the Energized Field will just be a +1 defense card, because obviously your oranges become blues. So Energized Field, again, was another consideration for the deck. But yeah, playing the Heroic Resolve, definitely check out that cool art on the back. Definitely very cool. And that rounds out the actions. Next up, for the weapons, we have a 3 handheld blaster. Not much to say about this, except for great with belligerence, turning these cards into great cards on attack. And you can also even equip this, because it does give bold 1, so it'll give you Maximus bold 2. So on your first turn, if you don't have any other weapons and you do have this, this is not just like a dead card in your hand you want to hurry up and get rid of for a green. So, and that rounds out the 8 double blues. Next up, we have 3 Unflinching Courage. This is the very first time I'm playing this card, but for good reason. So you can't put this on Decepticons, but when you put this on an Autobot, it gives them, or Autobot, or technically a Mercenary, it gives them bold 2. Now it's a blue-black, which definitely represents the trying to hit the effect of the Maximus body mode side. So, and given the bold 2, it just obviously has that synergy there. So definitely easy 3 include of, and easy 3 of to include. Now, something to keep in mind with bold effects, I'll also put the Combat Daggers here. Combat Dagger was a flex spot, but it pretty much just plays its role as being a better, the icon colors that you want it to be, orange-black. There are no other orange-black weapons to play besides this card, and it does also give bold 1, so it plays its role on both sides. Unfortunately, it doesn't give like +1 attack or anything. That probably would have been too good, but that's what it is there for. And I will say, that Cerebros effect, keep in mind. So Cerebros, when you do battle, let's say when you attack and you do hit the amount of colors that you need to hit, you hit a white, orange, black, and blue. When you get the effect, you can put Unflinching Courage on, but because you already flipped battle cards for your attack, you will not be able to flip an additional 2 cards for the bold 2. So make sure you, and that goes obviously the same for Combat Dagger as well. Another card that I'm playing that you will not be able to do this with, but it is pretty cool to still have in here, and it plays its role very well, is 3 Sturdy Javelin. Now, everybody except for once you trickle down to Flame Out is melee, so if you give the Sturdy Javelin to him, he'll be a 4 bold 1, or excuse me, 4 bold 2, so he'll pretty much be a, what's that card's name? He'll be Sky Shadow Plane for a turn, because Sky Shadow Plane has 4 attack and bold 2. So if you have like a Sturdy Javelin in like your end game, and then you also had a Belligerence, that'll be a very strong turn. And if it's head versus head or something along those lines, you can definitely get a big strong attack out of Flame Out. So, but this card plays its role being a white icon. Of course, it more direct damage, so dealing direct damage to your opponent is always definitely very good. And this is another card that you will not be able to use with Cerebro. So you will not, you can have it, but you won't be able to throw it in the same turn. So when you already attack, you miss the window to throw the Javelin. So if you do hit the effect after you flip battle cards, you can equip the Javelin, but you won't be able to use it till the following turn. Now, in the event that this is the only weapon in your scrap pile, or the only upgrade that's worth putting on in your scrap pile, so be it, put this on. But otherwise, yeah, you won't be able to do that. So definitely keep those things in mind. Next up, we were playing 2 Armed Hovercraft. Now, this is another flex spot. I think it's definitely very well merited in this deck. Cerebros and, of course, Maximus are both ranged, so imagine those turns. I think a really powerful turn is, playing Precision Fire and then playing Armed Hovercraft, and then you also play, you attack with Maximus and you hit the effect. That's 4 damage on all of their characters, not to mention the amount of attack being, Maximus will be at 9 with the Hovercraft, so being at 9 and potentially dealing and killing whatever character he's attacking is just like sincerely very powerful. And I'm definitely, like I said, excited to get some games in with this deck, so be looking out for some webcam games with me playing this deck very soon. So Hovercraft is also very good in this deck because you could play it, recur it from the scrap pile. So again, with Cerebros being your main guy, when Cerebros does attack, this will be a card that you could easily play on top, or excuse me, play and deal 1 damage to every character. So your direct damage gets a lot weaker once you go down to Cerebros, but he is able to play from the graveyard very well, because remember, it's whenever he battles, so even on defense you can grab stuff back. And last but not least, we have another card that Maximus is on, Master Sword. Now, Master Sword is very easy to play in this deck. Another deck that is very easy to play in is Octone, because Octone with dual wield, you can play Armed Hovercraft for your turn, and in that same turn, you can play dual wield and bring the Master Sword over that and give your Octone potentially 12 attack versus whoever he's attacking, which is nuts. So I'm hoping I have another Octone deck I want to build soon, so definitely be looking forward to an Octone deck profile because, yeah, I feel like that deck can potentially become better even in this meta with all the direct damage that he has, like just being able to shoot characters like, crazy. So and he gets even stronger again because, like, again, Fangry with Parsec is also an Autobot. So if I flip to the Autobot side, it's not like dead. The Fangry will take 1 because it's technically it's an Autocon, it's an Autobot and Decepticon. But playing this card from your scrap pile is probably the time we'll use this the most. You're only playing 1. You're going to have those situations where, you're going to shuffle your scrap pile and that's just going to suck. It is what it is. But the times that you don't, having a turn where you play Unflinching Courage or one of your, or Combat Dagger, Sturdy Javelin, obviously, you already throw that, so that doesn't matter. But, you play Hovercraft or one of your bold cards, you get the bold out of your, your attack. And then once you hit the effect, you can play Master Sword over that weapon, requiring for its effect. And then you'll the math actually counts. So like when he attacks, the Master Sword will actually count towards the battle. So what happens is you attack with your character, you flip the correct amount of battle cards, and you trigger the effect. And this all actually happens before your opponent flips defense cards for defense, technically. When you play Hovercraft off, let's say if you play Hovercraft off of your battle flips, right? Or not off your battle flips, from your scrap pile. If you're attacking a character that only has 1 health left from your attack target and it gets KO'd, your opponent will not flip cards for defense. And the reason why that is because they don't have a character to defend with. So whether it's a body, and even if the head pops off or anything like that, when you play the Armed Hovercraft from your scrap pile on a character that you're attacking and that character has 1 health left, that character will be KO'd and they will not flip for their defensive flips, because the order goes, your opponent attacks, uses their effects. I think if your opponent has a secret action that states when this card attacks or whatever, You're able to flip that card then. Next up for our armors, that's it for the weapons. We have 2 sparring gear, 1 ghost shield, and 1 force field. Now force field just plays this role with being a good card to randomly bring back from the scrap pile when you're, even though your Cerebros obviously has 5 or more health, so you can live by 1 or live by whatever, and kind of help potentially swing the tide back in your favor against aggro decks. Ghost shield is the same as Master Sword. The reason why I'm playing the sparring gear is because this is the best card to be able to flip the most amount of cards on defense. Despite Pierce being everywhere, blah blah blah, belligerence, I get that, but they're not going to always have those cards, so you can potentially have this more than they have belligerence and all those other cards because this is a green. So flipping this card on, you'll have tough 3 with Maximus, so tough 3 will give you a higher chance of hitting his effect. Playing this card on Cerebros, you'll have tough 3 again, so you'll have a higher chance of potentially hitting his effect and grabbing a upgrade from your scrap pile. And so also with this sparring gear, you'll flip for defense and then you'll trigger the effect, and before damage is calculated, if ghost shield is in your scrap pile, you can play the ghost shield over the sparring gear and then have 4 defense now with your Cerebros. So only 1 of each of those, but that's the idea with that. It's only 4 armors. And then last but not least, we have 2 of another new card, Escape Castle. Escape Castle is another new card from the Wave 5 Tidemasters attack. It gets +1 attack, and then it's also a utility, and most importantly, it's a orange-black. So it's our first orange-black, or no, our second orange-black utility behind Immersed in Shadows. When you deploy the upgraded character's head, you put all upgrades and this onto that character. So if you have this early game, you can trickle down all of the things you have onto your next character. So there are a couple things I want to talk about this card. When you have this card and an upgrade in your hand, consider potentially putting this on first. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you play your weapon first and then your Maximus happens to die by battle, you just lose the weapon totally because it goes to the scrap pile. The weapon does not continuously go down onto each character unless you have Escape Capsule. If you play the Escape Capsule and your Maximus dies, the Escape Capsule itself still goes on to Cerebros. So at least you'll keep the Escape Capsule. Then on your next turn, you could play another upgrade. And so if you play, let's say you had Unflinching Courage and Escape Capsule in your hand, the order of operations is to play this first. Let's say Maximus does die. Then you get to put this Escape Capsule on. Your next turn you play Unflinching Courage. Unflinching Courage, you attack. Let's go all the way in favor of what the deck wants to do. You attack, you trigger Cerebros effect. Cerebro now grabs the sparring gear from your scrap pile. So now your Cerebros may survive that next battle. Let's say your Cerebros doesn't die. He gets another attack, you do your thing. Then end game gets closer, your Cerebros ends up dying. Now the Unflinching Courage or whatever you have, the Escape Capsule and the sparring gear probably won't matter as much because Flame Out only has 1 health or 1 defense and 2 health. But you get the idea. All those cards come back on. So again, the order of operations when you do draw this card is to play this first, because even if your main guy does die, this will pop off and go on to the next character, and it does get +1 attack, so something to keep in mind. And that's 42 cards. Like I said, playing this deck at 42 is just going to let me see what cards I really don't need in here or don't really want here aren't as good. I think this is the best version I've come up with so far, as it should be, being like version 5, like I said. But I'm very excited to play this deck on some live streams potentially, and or even the some webcam games. So definitely be looking out for that, and definitely a whole bunch more deck profiles and interviews, more comp camps and all that good stuff. I got a little bit more leeway from work and stuff. Things are lightening up just a bit, so while it is, I'm trying to get these videos in when I can. But that'll be it for the video, guys. You guys know what it is. I appreciate you guys being here. If you guys like the video, definitely like the click that like button, subscribe to the channel, because again, I have a whole bunch more content coming for you guys. We are in some unique times. We are making the best of it with the webcam games and trying to keep the community together and get through this all together. All right, guys, you guys be safe out there. You guys know what it is. This is your homie S. Dot. You guys have a great day and or night whenever you're catching this video.